morning, everyone. I'm Anita Finley, as you know, and I'm your Zoomer Times host. And I try to find people from all over the country as well as locally here in South Florida. And I found a jewel. I did find someone who's going to talk to us about feet. And I was laughing when he first came, when I first saw him on our Zoom show, because I said, normally I put my feet up because I do that with different kinds of things, but I'm not going to do it. Let me tell you a little bit. I don't know that much about Dr. David, I'm sorry, I've got this here, Dr. David Armstrong. I don't know very much about him. I met him online because he's very articulate and he does a discussion about feet and what you should know about them. And most people, they hide their feet in shoes and only if they're forced to go to a podiatrist do they go. So I thought this would be interesting. He is so smart and so friendly. So I'm going to let him just talk about feet and how. First, I'm going to ask you, when you decide to go to medical school, what made you think about feet?
Well, I'll tell you, hello, by the way, and it's a pleasure to meet you again virtually. And hello to Dan, your intrepid and stellar producer, who I don't think gets enough credit. So there you go, Dan. So I'll tell you, so I was kind of born into this. I don't know how anyone would really somehow get interested in feet, but I grew up in a little town. My parents are from New York, both born and raised, but my dad, who by the way grew up in Flatbush in New York, now is all a fancy place, but he grew up in a cold water flat there and everything, and grew up and then came out west. I grew up in the office. He was a foot doctor, one of the first actually surgically trained one in California in the 50s and 60s. I grew up helping out there, and I saw this strange discipline that no one really thinks about, really. But I saw how, you could help someone. There are very few specialties in medicine or surgery where someone could walk in hurting, if you think about it, and walk out feeling well almost the same day in a lot of ways. And I think podiatry is certainly one of those areas, especially. So that really appealed to me. What's kind of funny now, of course, is that my area of interest and specialty has kind of gravitated to the whole other area of taking care of feet, which is to prevent amputations and heal wounds and whatnot, and in people with diabetes. And of course, many of those folks can't feel pain. So I've kind of gone to the whole other extreme there, Anita.
Let me, then I'm glad you brought up a few points I want to talk about, even though you have a lot more to talk about. I do know someone, an elder man in his 90s, and he fell, and he's been nursing his leg because it was cut. And I told him he needs hyperbaric oxygen because it's not healing well. Would you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So hyperbaric oxygen is a therapy that's pretty common now in sort of specialty wound centers, certainly in Florida, but also around the United States. And the way that it works is that someone goes into a tank, and generally speaking, there's two different kinds. There's one where you go into like a big kind of communal sort of thing with 4 or 5 of you, but there are very few of those. I don't even think there are any in Florida. But then there are others where you just kind of lay down in like a little tank, and you look through. It's all glass, and you can watch TV while you breathe in air or oxygen at over 1 atmosphere absolute. In fact, it's usually about 2 atmospheres. So what that does, just to get, if you want to get really inside baseball, is it kind of super saturates your plasma, your blood, the hemoglobin in your blood, and then it kind of spills over into your plasma, so you get all this oxygen flowing through your body. And theoretically, that may help heal some wounds. And there are some data to show that it does heal wounds faster, and there are other ones to show that it may actually reduce risk for amputation. So it's not unusual to see these kinds of things in wound centers around the country, around the United States especially.
That's good. I'm glad you mentioned that. The other thing that I do want to suggest, and I don't know if people do this, but the Medicare population, are they supposed to go once a month to see you or to see a podiatrist? And what do
Yeah.
you do when you see them?
Anita, thanks for asking. I think whether you have Medicare or not, but certainly, I mean, there are very few things where there are so many. There's so much data to support this. Usually when we're talking, I mean, a lot of times, I mean, our group are working on everything from spread on skin to wearable robots and all these fancy things and implantable sensors. And there's all kinds of data for these sorts of things, but very seldom is there something where there's so much data as seeing your foot doctor. If you have diabetes, let's say, and you see your foot doctor, then and another member of the diabetes team, and that other member could be a diabetes specialist. It could be just your general practitioner. It could even be a nurse practitioner or another member of the team. Any of those people, along with a foot doctor, your risk for getting an amputation over the next 6 years, not just year, drops anywhere from just about 20%, just under 20%, to about 2/3. It's crazy. And that year, it reduces your risk for getting hospitalized by something also crazy, like 1/3, just by seeing the foot doctor. So very few things. If we were talking about a 5% improvement in something like heart attacks or strokes or something, it would be a blockbuster drug. And there are blockbuster drugs that are based on that. Nothing like what we're talking about here. So that's a blockbuster. So if you can get in at least annually, if you have diabetes, certainly just to see your foot doctor, then he or she will be able to assess your risk and then kind of tell you how often to come back.
Great. All right. And I have something I've been saving for you.
I'm so excited. This is like this is like a Christmas right now.
I knew you could answer them. I didn't even have to warn you ahead of time. I want to talk about flip-flops because I don't wear them. And I think it's appropriate name flip-flops because when you wear them, you flip and you flop. What can you do about that? I think it's horrible that these, especially older people, wear them. They ride bikes with them. They do things with them. I think it's insane. What's your opinion?
Well, you can call them flip-flops. And I was just talking yesterday afternoon to friends of ours in Australia. I go there a lot. We do a lot of work there with teams there, and they call them thongs in Australia. So you could get a little confused there. So here you can be wearing your flip-flops while also wearing a thong. Over there, no. But yes. So flip-flops. Look, I think that if you're gonna wear flip-flops, it's certainly, and you're older and you have had any kind of balance issues. Let's say you've had a stroke, or let's say you have diabetes and what's called neuropathy, where it's a little harder to feel the ground and it happens so slowly. Then you just want to be a little more careful when you're getting around wearing these flip-flops, especially going upstairs and downstairs, especially if you just changed out your glasses. All these kinds of things can dramatically affect your what's called your postural stability, which is how you kind of stand up like this, but also when the way you walk, the way you ambulate is the $5 word. If you're gonna wear it, if you're gonna wear flip-flops and you're really accustomed to them, great. But just understand that over time, you might want to consider switching to some other kind of sandal that might has a little closed toe or something over that area that might be a little more supportive. But really, I think if it's comfortable for you and you speak to your nurse, your doc, I think you're probably okay either way. But if you have diabetes and you can't feel pain, that little that little piece of rubber there in between the toes can sometimes hurt you too. So just keep an eye on that.
Well, the reason I'm just going to throw this to you, I happen to be a gerontologist, and I'm always for preventing people not waiting till after. And I had a very close friend, and she's only in her 60s. She has no diabetes, but she was riding her bike with flip-flops, and she fell and tripped. Well, it caused her a lot of pain, and she wound up with a broken, femur, a lot of things. And so I've told her, do not wear those, wear something supportive. And every time I see an older person with them on, I get a little pushy, and I said, "Do you?"
I think your Dr. Finley. I think yours is the better part of valor, and so I think that if you tell people that, because I'm preaching to the converted here, but what is it that so many of us as we get older, are worried about, and it's a valid concern. You're worried that you're going to fall, and you're not going to be able, like C. Everett Koop, might have said, but you're not going to get back up again, and that may be the one thing that takes you from being independent and living, how you want to live with the people you love and the community you love, to all of a sudden, being in a nursing home, a skilled nursing facility or something or other. And for some, that's not what they want to hear, right? And so, whatever you can do to improve your postural stability and your balance and the way you can move is great. Another cool thing, though, Anita, is that's exciting, is that there are certain exercises that you can do. And our team, and it's really led by my friend and one of my research partners, Bijan Najafi. Say that really fast, Bijan Najafi. Doesn't that sound elegant? So Bijan, who is extremely Persian, but Bijan's at the not with us at Keck at USC. He's in Houston at Baylor College of Medicine. But Bijan has been doing a lot of work with just very simple exercises that you can do even while you're sitting down. And those little exercises, he's even, I don't want to make this too complicated, but it's pretty cool. He's even hooked up little video game controllers on the feet. So if you guys have ever, so if you've ever seen a Wii, a Wii, like Wii, there used to be something called Wii Fit, and we call it Wii Feet. And then there was something called Ninja Fruit, and he changed it to Ninja Feet and all these crazy things. So just these little games and where you maybe are getting around an obstacle, and it's really fun. He's done a lot of work in people with neuropathy, in people that have been post-stroke after cancer and having chemotherapy with neuropathy, that just those little things can tangentially, or I should say temporarily, transiently is the word, really improve your balance. So there's little things you may be able to do while you're sitting down, even before you get back up. And as the data emerge, that's going to be a lot of fun to be able to bring to people as well, just to give them a little bit of a boost, so they can take a few extra steps, whether it's around the house or whether it's going to the market, or just getting out to the car, get the mail, whatever.
So my guest is Dr. David Armstrong, and he is calling in from Southern California, and he is a podiatric surgeon, and he's well, some people might know as a podiatrist, but he's much bigger, much smarter, very articulate. And before I let you go on that topic, let's go back. Can you tell us a couple of those little exercises that someone, we're watching TV, what can they do?
Well, the games are specifically being studied. So you'd have to get these games right now. I can get Bijan to send you the information about those things, because you may be able actually to participate in some of the studies. But you can maybe put that on a website. But for simple things that you can do, yes, absolutely. What? Here's some things. It's really easy. If you and it may sound kind of ridiculous, but if you're sitting in the Barca lounger or whatever lounger, and then or if you're sitting in bed before you get up, just try to spell the alphabet with your feet, and like this, and do that with both feet. It takes a long time. It feels like forever, even though it's maybe only 30 seconds. And then just by doing that, and then really just trying to feel the ground when you sit down after you swing out of bed, that alone already has a transient effect on improving your postural stability, and it's a measurable effect. And I think you'll start to feel it too. People will, if they just. The trouble is, of course, this is like 11th on your 10 most important things to do in the morning, so you're going to forget. But if you can remember that could be really helpful. And there are a bunch of other little things that likely could be added on to that could help, even just before you get up. That could improve things, just to allow you to sort of engage.
I happen to love the alphabet. I'm going to use that in a little article about I'm going to try it myself. Oh, that's fabulous. The alphabet, do the alphabet with your feet to help you have more motion, and that's great. Okay, so let's talk about neuropathy. We know a lot of people have that, even if they haven't had cancer. Where does the neuropathy come from? Why does it come from where it does? And what can people do about it?
So the neuropathy we'll talk about is what people call peripheral sensory neuropathy. And the most common cause of peripheral neuropathy anywhere in the world now by far is diabetes. So and we could talk about other causes as well. You mentioned cancer and chemotherapy, but also certainly other kinds of things can cause it. Certain other drugs can cause it, and alcohol can cause it. But really, just 85 or more percent of, or even more than that, is caused by diabetes. And the reason that happens is complicated. Meaning really that we just don't quite understand it yet. We actually had a great discussion last Thursday with a bunch of people, friends of mine from Johns Hopkins and Kansas City and et cetera, et cetera. We had a great meeting, but about the kind of, and also for the Middle East from Qatar and Cornell Hospital there. But what we saw, what we believe happens is that it's a combination of high blood sugar, of course, but also what else can cause it is dyslipidemia, meaning just a poor, not just poor glucose control, but maybe also poor lipid management. And so it's both of those. And the cardiovascular bits and pieces, the dyslipidemia, as we call it, may actually be more important, believe it or not, than the glucose control in how this develops in people, especially in people with diabetes. So slowly, people tend to lose some feeling. And it happens, Anita, so slowly. It's so sinister. It's like watching grass grow or paint dry. And it happens to where we just don't notice it. And so what ends up happening is that over time, and this is over years, you end up being able to literally wear a hole in your foot like we normally wear a hole in a sock or a shoe. And that hole is really what's dangerous. It's called a diabetic foot ulcer in diabetes, and about half, and that happens now every 1.2 seconds. We had a paper in the New England Journal not too long ago that looked at that. Every 1.2 seconds, someone around the world gets a foot ulcer, and it's happening more commonly now, not less. And about half the time those get infected, and every 20 seconds now, someone gets an amputation now because of diabetes. And the good news about all that, the bad news is that it's bad, and that the 5-year mortality after an amputation is worse than all but the worst forms of cancer, all but lung and pancreatic cancer. So it's very significant. And even if you have a wound, that also can potentially shorten your life. But there are things you can do about it. There are things we can do to heal the wound. You already mentioned a little bit. There are things we can do to likely improve the natural history of diabetes and neuropathy by improving lipid control and glucose control. And there's a lot we can do if you actually have a wound to try to heal that wound and reduce the risk for amputation. Or even if you have an amputation, there's things you can do to dramatically improve your activity. So you can get around the house and do things and even get around the community. And so all of these things, for all of these things, there's hope, truly. And so that's the really good news about a lot of bad stuff.
Well, Dr. David Armstrong, you're really full of it. I have to tell you, you're so good. I mean, you know so many things. I love the fact that
you're Anita. That's now you sound like my long-suffering, much better half Tanya, saying that I'm full of it. I get that every day
in a positive way. So I guess when you have a patient who comes in just for a checkup, they don't know if anything's wrong, what questions do you ask them, and what do you do?
So if someone comes in and they have diabetes, so let's talk about if they have diabetes, and then we could talk about just a general foot exam. But if they have diabetes, the first thing we want to check as we're talking to them, obviously, in addition to looking at their glucose control and their lipid control and their vitals, their blood pressure, what we're going to talk to them about, and we're going to check, is their sensation. and they're in the presence of neuropathy. And believe it or not, that can be checked. We do have some fancy methods to evaluate that, but the simplest way is at hand. You can just use your hand to actually do a quick, we call it a touch test. It was developed by a friend of mine, Jerry Raymond, in Ipswich. So it's the Ipswich touch test. How's that for some extremely useless information for you? So Jerry Raymond.
You could just use a pin and just hit.
Well done. Yeah. So a pin is helpful too. So we've tested a whole bunch of different things. So that's a sharp, dull test. All of these things are carried by different fibers, and hot and cold. But even if you're just testing for what we call loss of protective sensation or LOPS, then you can just use actually your finger. There's other tools as well. There are monofilaments that can bend that we've tested and vibratory things. But anyway, so there's that. That's the first thing. The second thing that we're going to check is your circulation. And the first thing we might do there is just check your pulses. And there's two main pulses that we feel in the foot, on the inside and on the top. And then sometimes we feel on your leg as well. Don't worry, we're not getting fresh or anything like that. We're just checking your leg too. So if you see a foot doctor doing that, and then so those are things that are very, very important, because we can often detect, and often the first people to detect what's called peripheral artery disease, or PAD, which is super common in the United States. We see about 15 to 20 million people with PAD now in the United States. And there's about 35 million people with diabetes in the United States. So you see how common peripheral artery disease. So that's the next thing.
Excuse me. So let me just throw this into you. So if someone walks in and they have swollen ankles, that's certainly something. But what if they don't have swollen ankles?
Yeah.
Does that mean everything's okay?
No, it doesn't mean everything's okay, but it's great if you don't have swollen ankles. It's very common to have swollen ankles as you get older. And the reason is that's usually an indicator of something happening, either kind of locally, meaning that the veins locally sometimes get a little lazy. The valves in the veins that usually capture blood during each heartbeat, as your blood kind of runs up like a level, like an elevator, like bump, 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 bump. And those get a little lazy. So they tend to, if they get lazy, they tend to leak a little and pool down at the end of the body. That's why at the end of the day, your legs are more swollen than at the beginning of the day. But so that's locally, but also farther north, up at the other end of the peninsula, at the heart, you can have, that can often be a marker of heart failure. It could often be a marker of a problem in your kidneys, or your liver. And so quite literally, just looking at the soul, or you're really staring at the whole body, right? This isn't like, people make a joke about all that, doing, what do you call it? Reflexology, but no, you really can get a lot. You can learn a lot at the end of at the humble foot, about the rest of the body, for sure.
So I know we're going to run out of time, but, so I just want to say,
this is like adult daycare for me, Anita. We're going to run out of time. How is that even possible? I got my darn coffee for this. By the way, this has turmeric in it. Turmeric, how's that? For
I was wondering what you were
fancy.
drinking, but Dr. Armstrong's been terrific, and maybe we have just another couple of minutes here. But the foot is very important, and of course, we've been talking a lot about people with diabetes, and I guess that's the stage 2 diabetes, but there are a lot of people who don't have diabetes. They do have some of the illnesses you talked about, but what foods would you suggest quickly? That I know turmeric, I saw that, but blueberries, eggs, what kinds of things would you send your patient away, for a diet kind of food?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm happy to answer it, but I'm not the best person to answer it. We have in our clinic, in our limb preservation clinic, we have Maritza Molina. She's a gifted dietitian and nutritionist. You ought to have her on here. She is great. She is like, so we have her, she comes like literally right behind me into the room. And, I used to think most of us, we go to medical school or medical training, and there's this perception that we know everything about everything or something or other. And it's ridiculous. We don't have a lot of good training in nutrition in real, nutrition, like we should. It's a big dearth. It's getting better, but it's a big dearth in medical training. But what I will say is that everything. I don't want to get Greek on you, but I will tell you that being a bit of a Hellenophile, I think everything in moderation. I think a good Mediterranean diet is very healthy. There are a lot of data as well, if you want to go to some of the extremes, about very high protein diets for weight loss, not only in diabetes but for other things too. So consult your dietitian and your general physician. There's also really good data on, believe it or not, I used to roll my eyes when I was a kid about plant-based diet, but I don't anymore. There's a lot of data about this, and you can have even though I love meat, you can have a very low red meat, high fish kind of diet, and that's very anti-inflammatory. And you can still get some of the protein there with your meat, or you could just go entirely, like it seems like half of my California friends do here, vegan. But all of this is possible. But what you have to do is to start something with an idea, stick to it, and measure what you manage.
And it's interesting you're in Southern California, because I'm into, you were talking about diets, but the blue zones, and I know that you know all about blue zones.
Very much, yeah.
And you
Loma
do
Linda.
have one there in California. That's
I know.
right.
I know the people in Loma Linda really well. I'm fascinated with it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but it just takes people to, if you want to live to be 100 or you want to live well, that's what you have to do. But I can see when someone comes to you, you keep them laughing, even though there may be some serious things. I'll bet when they walk away, you really do, you emphasize certain things, but they know you care about them. And I think that we've just now running out of time. Hi there.
Hello.
Have we run out of time?
Just about.
Yeah, this has been interesting, hasn't it, Dan?
Oh my goodness, yes. What such a great subject, really. It just
we can go on and on. It's there's so much to talk about,
Sure.
And there's so much going on in the area. And you think of the foot, it's just this humble little area.
Yeah, the humble.
And there's nothing more of an expression of humility, is there, Anita, than looking after the feet, right? It crosses all religions and borders and everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Dan, I ought to have on my cover some feet, just plain feet, right? Do something
I
on
could
it.
put some feet walking up to the
Right. It's great.
But that's the other thing. That's the other thing about it. There's very little else that makes us so human, right? Is the ability to walk upright. And, when you take that away, that ability to move around, it changes you. And I'm there you go.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed talking with you, Dr. David Armstrong. You're certainly very, very, not only articulate, but you're fun. I mean, I knew you would be from watching your video. And thank you very much for taking the time. And this will go on YouTube, and Dan will send you a copy. But thanks, I really appreciate it. I wish you lived down here so we could do more things together.
Oh, listen, we could do it virtually as well, and I get out there pretty often as well. But it's a total.
I'm sure you do.
It's a total pleasure, Anita and Dan.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You guys take care and be well.
I hope you enjoyed the foot specialty.
Thank you, Dr. Armstrong.
All right. Bye now.
Bye-bye.